Okay, so I've been playing Fire Emblem Three Houses for about a month now. I only really have an opportunity to play it once a week for a couple of hours, so I'm only up to Chapter 11, like right before the time skip, but I've played the game for 24 hours, which probably sounds really weird to get to only Chapter 11 and have spent 24 hours on the game, but I feel that's enough for me to kind of give my first impressions on the game. Like, I want to say that I've had an overall positive experience. Like, I don't just want to say it, that's pretty much the truth. I've been having fun with Fire Emblem Three Houses. I thought I would have a lot less fun with it because, you know, I was the only one being skeptical. Like, a lot of people were happy and excited for the new Fire Emblem Three Houses, which is more than I can say for Fates and Echoes. But yeah, like, I have things to say about Three Houses, but I just want to get this out of the way so, like, the people who think I hate every video game I've ever played don't assume this right out of the gate. It was fun. It was enjoyable. Like, the story is okay so far. The acting is... yeah, the acting is passable, I want to say. Well, except for Mercedes. She should really ditch the high-pitched voice that she went with. But yeah, I'm enjoying it. I mean, like, I'm playing through the maps, and everything's going fantastic. There's only been a couple of hiccups so far, but I want to talk about the fact that Fire Emblem Three Houses is completely broken. Yes! I'm saying this even though I'm only halfway through the game. I'm up to Chapter 11 of the Blue Lions route on Hard Classic, in case you're wondering. So, like, not only do I have the other half of Blue Lions to go through, I have 2 more playthroughs, 3 more playthroughs, actually, because of this thing in the Black Eagles route that I've heard about, but, I suppose I'll eventually get to that, but, like, I can already see that there are just, like, a number of balance issues with the game right now, because, yeah, so, I wrote down all of my thoughts on the game balance and the system in general, but it wound up so disjointed that I decided to go with an unscripted vlog video. So that's what I'm going with here. Like, again, I don't want anyone to think I hate Three Houses, because I really don't, but it's just, like, this is... Three Houses is kind of on Fire Emblem, if that makes sense. So, the basic idea behind Three Houses is that you're this professor at a combat academy, and you teach your students how to wield the weapons and command the troops, etc. Even though when you start the game, all of your weapon skills are very low. Like, I know that when you raise your own character's weapon skills, that means the other students, your students learn faster, yes, but it's still very weird for this one professor at the academy to have to get training from the other professors at the academy, even though you're supposed to be, like, on their level or something. And yeah, the whole Three Houses thing, you pick one of 3 houses to join. It's like Harry Potter, basically. You know, and since it's an academy, you have a bunch of other non-combat training stuff you can do, like you can fish, you can cook food to raise your stats, and this was actually one of the annoying things, because I don't really think Fire Emblem needed a Tea Party minigame, although if I had to pick between a Tea Party minigame and a face-rubbing minigame, yeah, you know which one I'm gonna pick. And I know all of the stuff and all of the non-combat stuff is entirely optional, and a lot of the paralogs and side battles are optional too. One of the reasons it's taking me so long to get through just this one route, like 24 hours in, and I'm only halfway through Blue Lions, is because, like, they give you, like, all of the missions in the game take place at the end of the month. It's weird. It's kind of weird to have a battle on the 31st or 30th of every month, by the way, but whatever. They give you all of the time, like, they give you every Saturday before the mission to, like, just do whatever you want. You can fight a paralog battle, or you can just run around the monastery and, like, plant stuff or collect, like, lost items and return them to all the students and stuff. And all of that is done to increase the, what's the word? Motivation. Collecting lost items and giving gifts, like, does it increases the motivation of all the students, and that gives them more incentive to get more out of the Sunday lessons. Like, all of the lessons are on Sunday. Well, all the lessons are probably taking place over the week. See, this is one of the good things about the calendar stuff, because it kind of more immerses you. Like, nobody knew exactly how much time was spent between battles in every Fire Emblem, and it was also very weird for the characters to just be doing absolutely nothing, gaining no experience or weapon ranks. Like, I'm sure they would be training between missions, and now they are. So, where was I? So yeah, they give you all this time before the missions to do stuff, and that kind of got me into the mindset of, oh, I have only a limited amount of time to do stuff and get items and things, so I'd better maximize however much I'm getting from that limited amount of time. That's just my nature. Like, even though there's no time limit in an Elder Scrolls game, for example, I'm always making sure not to waste all that much time going from one quest to the next. That's kind of in my nature, so, like, it just leads to all of this time being spent on stuff, even though it's optional stuff. I kind of, like, it's a me thing, it's not the game, really. So, yeah, they have all of this out-of-combat stuff, which I don't think was completely necessary, because I play Fire Emblem for the combat. Yeah, I think a lot of people play Fire Emblem for the combat. Like, Fire Emblem's kind of, like, in this weird spot where it's, like, character relations and non-combat activities are also a big part of it, and they help out with the combat, which is nice, but, like, it's just not meshing with me personally. That's the thing. So, yeah, so I'm gonna discuss the class system next, because the way weapon ranks and such work, like, there's not only just weapon ranks, there's a riding rank. You can teach your characters how to ride horses, and all of the teaching that you do kind of feeds into what class they're allowed to be. Like, in order to unlock a class for the character, you have to get their weapon ranks up to a certain point, and then they can have a chance to change their class. And this is kind of like the on-Fire Emblem thing that I was talking about, because whatever you teach the students, that determines what classes they're allowed to pick, rather than what class they've chosen kind of determining what kind of weapons they use, or what kind of unit they are. Like, this is still doing the Shadow Dragon thing, where the class growths get combined with the character growths, but I looked this up online, and the class growths, they're so minimal. Like, there's not going to be much difference between a 40% chance to gain a stat at a level up and a 50% chance. It's still kind of a coin toss, just like a little less than a coin toss, but whatever. So, yeah. And because of that, they've made it so that any character in the game can use almost any weapon or attack in the game. Like, obviously there's going to be limitations on it. They specifically made it so that mounted units cannot punch things, which is a new thing. I'll get to that. Mages cannot punch things either, but mages can use any weapon type they want, besides punching. And that is very, very weird, because, you know, it kind of makes all the classes feel the same to me. And obviously classes have different skills or abilities, and the combat art system came back. Speaking of combat arts, I like what they did with the combat arts this time around. They don't cost HP like in Echoes, they actually just cost more weapon durability, which I think was a very good move, by the way. But Magic is another story, because Magic is now running on a spells per battle system. It's like a D&D spells per day system, and that's better than making it cost hit points like in Echoes, but that's also, you know, Magic, I'm pretty sure not a lot of people know this, but Magic used to be an actual weapon type that had its own durability and stuff. So, like, if you got a bolting tome, that would only have 5 shots over the course of the game before it broke. Now you're getting however many shots of bolting per battle, and this is really, it's not only, it's like I say, Three Houses is basically broken, because, well, like, in addition to the fact that you can, like, fire off as many heals as you want per battle, like, Fire Emblem was really about, like managing the resources over the course of an entire campaign. Lately, it's kind of become like managing resources mid-battle. Like, you're not going to care how many resources that you use in a particular battle if you're allowed to use that many resources in every battle. So, for things like Warp, which returns, well, it returned in Echoes, but like, you get 2 warps. If your character learns Warp, you get 2 warps per battle. Instead of just like having like 3 warps to use over the course of the campaign, you had to think about if you were really going to need a warp later, or if you were going to use it right away. Like, I think this is more of an issue. Like, I think planning ahead is more of an issue if you've played the game before, because if you've played a Fire Emblem before. Like any Fire Emblem, like, you're not going to know how many warps you need or what the most optimal point to use them is unless you've played the game before, which I think leads to that old Fire Emblem habit of just like throwing all your rare items into the convoy and then just never using them. But like, okay, let's talk about another thing. If you get, like, you can train your weapon ranks in Reason, which is the elemental anima magic, and Faith, which is the healing magic and stuff that includes Warp, Silence, and a couple of other things. If you have a mage class, like, you have to be in a mage class in order to use magic, but if you're in a mage class, you can use any kind of spell that you've learned. Like, this includes white magic, which is what the Faith is called, and black magic, which is what the elemental magic is called. So, if you've got a priest, like, I made both, well, I made Mercedes into a priest, and I made Annette into a mage. Mercedes can use black magic and white magic, so what's the point of the mage class? Like, I know there are classes, like, I've got the list right here, so I should look this up. There are classes later on, like Bishop will double the number of white magic uses you get, and it increases the amount of healing you get, but it's still able to attack with elemental magic, so, like, there's no downside to being a Bishop over whatever the mage thing is. Is it on here? Warlock, I guess? But you could also be a warlock if you want to specialize specifically in the black magic. But the fact that you're allowed to use any magic spell, a mage could use any magic spell or any weapon type besides punching, and that's just like, it's not Fire Emblem. I don't really get it. Like, I'm actually using bows on a lot of characters, including my thieves, my cavaliers, because you'd want to get a cavalier because it's a mount, and this game has FE4 Canto. But, like, I mean, my high strength characters are actually doing so well with bows. Like, I've got Felix using a bow, and he's going crazy with it, because Felix in general is just the most overpowered thing ever. But even Dimitri and Sylvain, I made them both paladins, and they're crazy with their bows. They can just shoot and then get out of the combat zone, I guess. It's really weird. Like, I'm not even using any combat arts for bows or anything. I know Archer has +1 bow range, which is a good thing, but why would you want Archer over literally any other class? Well, why would you want Archer over Cavalier? Because Cavaliers have so much more movement options, and Archers just have the +1 bow range. In general, I just really don't get this idea of letting any character in the game use any weapon type in the game, because even with the weakest bow, guys like Sylvain and Dimitri are just going crazy with their archery. And I think that's also a consequence of one other thing they did. They brought back weapon weight, and weapon weight, if you'll recall, was a system that they've had since the beginning. What they took it out starting from, like, New Mystery of the Emblem because of shenanigans. It's very difficult to explain, but in the early days of Fire Emblem, like games 1 through 4, the weight of the weapon just gets subtracted from speed, which kind of made swords the best weapon type in the game because they were the lightest. It's not hard to understand this. But starting from Thracia 776 and going all the way until Sacred Stones, they introduced Constitution, which a lot of people seem to not like for some reason, because they failed to balance Constitution correctly. Constitution was basically a system where different classes would get penalized differently for using a heavy weapon. So obviously a warrior is going to be able to use a big axe without speed penalties compared to if, say, a hero did it, or a journeyman did it, if you want to go with Sacred Stones. And that system works really well, except for the fact that the females, they got lower Constitution for some reason. So you had people like Lute, and Yuan, I get his pronunciation wrong, and Sophia especially from Binding Blade, where the tomes are just so heavy that they might as well just have 0 speed. It's very bad. And instead of just giving the females similar Constitution, they figured, okay, we better do something differently. So when Path of Radiance was introduced, now they use the Strength stat instead of the Constitution stat, and that wrecked mages even harder because their Strength stat was so low. And everybody else was okay with it, because as long as your Strength was above like 15 or something, then you would never lose any speed, and the whole system was kind of pointless. So they figured that out in Shadow Dragon, and so New Mystery of the Emblem just got rid of weapon weight completely. But I took a long time to explain this, but we're back to having weapon weight in 3 houses, and it's back to the very old Fire Emblem's 1-2-4 system, where the weight just subtracts from your speed. Except if you have, like, for every 5 points in strength you get, I think this is how it works, I'm not sure. If you have 5 points of strength, for every 5 points in strength, you get 1 point of speed back. And, you know, that's not going to be much, because for even somebody like Dedue, he's for me right now, he's got 25 strength, so he's only losing 5 points. Axes are still really mean to him. Like, they ruin his speed. So it's better to just use bows and swords again. We're back to the system where the weakest, or the lightest weapons, rather, are the best ones. And, you know, it still feels like such a nonsensical change, because, again, any class in the game can use any weapon type in the game. So, swords and bows, those are going to be your best weapons for a bunch of guys. Like, forget the lances and forget the axes. Like, you don't even need javelins anymore. They're too heavy. Just use bows. And it doesn't really make any much sense. In fact, let me look something up, too. So, yeah, is there any purpose to the other classes? Well, they all give you something when you master them, which basically means you use that class on that character enough times, they get a bonus of sometimes. Like, I'll just pick one at random. Thief. If you master Thief, you can steal as any class. If you master Mercenary, then you get Vantage as any other class, if you so choose. If you master Myrmidon, you get the Swap Combat Art. If you master Priest, you get Miracle, etc. Oh yeah, and the Brawler class? The Brawler class can punch things without even needing a gauntlet weapon, and if you master that class, anybody can do it. In fact, let's talk about punching for a minute. For some reason, they decided to introduce a punching weapon type. They're gauntlets, so it's like Wolverine claws and stuff. But if you... Yeah, all of the gauntlets in the game, they all have the Brave effect, which doubles the number of hits you get when you initiate combat. And that's... why did you do that? So, okay, punching stuff is a light weapon type, so it fits really well with this system where the lightest weapons are favored the most, and they've made it so that you can initiate combat with it and get 4 hits. And if you kill a mage in 2 hits, you almost never have to fear a counterattack, because you're punching the guy 2 times, like, unless your accuracy is really low, but there's ways around that too. Also, you get more combat arts and abilities and stuff when you rank up. If you get to rank B with punching things, you get a combat art that gives you 50% of your health back for free. It doesn't use up any weapon durability or anything. It's just free. And if you master the Brawler class, you can punch stuff for free. It's probably weak. I would probably prefer to use gauntlets, but this is really, really wild. let's just say. Oh, apparently if you master Assassin, you get the one-hit kill ability for free, too. Jeez, that's a combat art, though. So, like, this is really kind of... Yeah. Oh, also, they made it possible to repair weapons as well. Not only can you repair weapons, you can also spend money and materials to upgrade them. But this is also really bad, too, because... From a balance standpoint, anyways, like, this is... I just want to say that this is turning into a Final Fantasy VIII kind of situation. Final Fantasy VIII is completely broken. Like, no questions asked, but it is still fun. Interacting with the system and breaking it because you know how and you can is a fun thing. The only thing stopping me from replaying FF8 a bunch is because it's too heavy on the cutscenes and story, but whatever. Three Houses is kind of like that. Fun, but broken. Fun to break, but broken. And I'm not sure completely and totally broken is better than something like Path of Radiance. Or, yeah. Also, speaking of Final Fantasy VIII, all the characters in that game were basically blank slates except for their limit breaks. Here in Three Houses, that's kind of sort of the same thing, because you can customize every unit any way you wish. I'm gonna look these up, because there are certain facets to the characters that kind of bias them towards certain builds. Like, oh, I should mention, all of the spells in the game, those are... Every character gets a unique list of spells for both black and white magic. So it's like Echoes, again, which is... I didn't think this was a good idea in Echoes, because how are you supposed to know who's going to get Excalibur, or Ragnarok, or whatever spell you want to get? How do you know who's getting it? You just have to level somebody up and find out, I guess. So, this turned out to be really bad for my Annette in particular, because it took her until rank A to get Excalibur. Meanwhile, Mercedes had Bolganon at rank C. And, by the way, why is it called Bolganon? It's clearly meant to be Volcanon, like a volcano? Whatever. So yeah, there are characters who only get 2 black magic spells. Both Felix and Dimitri only get Thunder and Thoron, yet for some reason they have... Like, there are bonuses if you raise their black magic skill, even though they only get 2 spells. I never understood that. If we go to the white magic list... everybody has Heal and Nosferatu, by the way, just like Echoes. Again, not every character should get Nosferatu. Although on this list, Serene'sForest.net misspelled it as Noferatu one time. No fear at you? Whatever. I'm being silly. So, like, a lot of characters get Physic. A lot of characters get Recover instead of Physic. Seraphim's back. And we have Warp. Yes. So like I mentioned with the whole spells per battle system. Oh yeah, and speaking of spells, only 3 characters in the game ever learn any dark magic. They brought dark magic back. But only 3 characters in the game learn any spells beyond the base black magic spell. Which I really don't understand. Those 3 units, by the way, aren't in my house. And, only one of them can be recruited out of the other 2 houses, so I have no idea what's going on there. You know, it costs a dark seal to get a dark mage. Or, doesn't matter what class they are? Do you have to be a dark mage? I don't actually know, but that was another thing that was just really weird. I have no idea why they're doing it this way. I guess they just wanted to... Did they not think of this? I don't know. There are exclusive But what was I getting to? So, yeah, the characters don't feel unique from one another. And there are unique skills, but I don't think that the character unique skills really do anything to separate one character from another. Like, if you go back to Fire Emblem 4, every character has a unique skill in Fire Emblem 4, actually. Well, most of them do. But each one of those skills, like, you're supposed to mix the skills together through the generation system in order to create broken units in Generation 2. And you know, that was actually, there's a lot of depth to that if you think about it, because you have Noish, who at the start of the game has a cost, which doubles the number of hits both sides get on in combat. You can give that, you could like pair Noish, you could totally pair Noish with Brigid, like nobody does this, but if you pair Noish with Brigid, then you've got an archer in the second generation. You could do it with Adine too, but then you would have an archer with a cost who is doubling the number of hits on both sides. And for archers, that's really good because, like, the enemy can't counterattack if you attack at range. So that's an example of getting two unique characters together and creating a sort of impressively broken and creative idea out of it. Like, you could combine Lex with Tailtoe, because that gives you the Ambush Wrath combo. This isn't practical, but like, you could, what was the other one? Noish again could pair with Ira, and then you've got Astra and Accost on the same unit, which can potentially let your unit attack up to 20 times and trigger other combat skills. You could pair Do with Ira, and then there would be, if you trigger Astra on the child characters from that pairing, then it's possible for them to have 5 chances to absorb hit points, because Do has the soul skill. And he gets Bargain, too, so, like, the children are going to repair their weapons at half price. But, you see, that's the kind of creativity that I want there to kind of be in mixing and matching all the skills together. Let me look at the skills from the classes again, because, let's see here. Because I don't really think there's any big combos like that, because, okay, Fire Emblem 4, like, you could argue that the skills in Fire Emblem 4 were broken, because they activate at random, most of them do, and, like, if you get an Astra, then you're basically killing somebody in one hit with it. But, like, it still took creativity to combine all of those skills together, and it's not like Fire Emblem 4 is a walk in the park, even if you do all of this. Like, make whatever joke you want about Seliph or Sigurd soloing the game. I still think Fire Emblem 4 is difficult, even if you do all of that, because you have boss characters later on that are crazy, and you have, like, a bunch of surprises to deal with, like all of those wyvern ambushes. But so far, the difficulty of Three Houses has been very low, even on hard mode. I know they're adding a lunatic option later on, and this is totally going to turn into the Kingdom Hearts situation, where the game is only hard on critical mode. Even though it's not, and anybody who says that is a complete liar. But one of the other reasons that Three Houses has not really been bearing its fangs in the difficulty department is because of the Divine Pulse, which is the successor to Mindless Turnwheel, but it lets you rewind X number of times per battle. You can rewind as far back as you want. Well, not as far back as you want, there's probably a limit, but you can rewind time in order to go back to a move that didn't give as good a result and then do something else. And this has been helpful. This has been helpful because I got a very bad critical hit from a mage on the main character. Like, the chances were 7%. And I got crit and killed. So I was happy to not have to redo the entire chapter because of Divine Pulse. But you can increase the number of pulses that you get per battle, as well as a bunch of other bonuses that serve to break the game even more. But, yeah, Divine Pulse, like, I'm not sure if it's a good idea because, yeah, I wasn't sure about casual mode either. Like I've said this before, but I think casual mode is something that was inevitable because they were focusing on smaller casts in order to give the casts better development. But it's still, like, if you play on Classic, then you're still kind of pushed you're still pushed to do better at the game. You're pushed to be more cautious. You're pushed in order to get better and not get everyone killed. But with the Divine Pulse, or even the Turn Wheel, now you can, like, take any risk you want and then dial it back. And I'm just not sure if this is... I guess you could ignore it. You could ignore it. You're always... It's always an option to just ignore a feature if you think it makes the game too easy. In fact, like, you could probably say that about everything I'm doing with my characters. Like, I could just stay within a weapon restriction in order to, I don't know, preserve some semblance of class balance, but, it gives you the option, and I don't think it's, it gives you the option, so I don't think it's, like, a bad thing to actually use it. Like, if it gives you the option, then you should not feel any sort of shame for using it, in my opinion. And you know, I think if I did try to impose any sort of self-restriction, then the game would be less fun. That's my opinion. I mean, you're able to use any weapon type you want at the base class of Noble/Commoner anyways. So yeah, all of this just feels kind of overpowered and stuff. Like, it's just easy to overpower yourself. That's my thought. It's too easy to overpower yourself. That is all. That is all I want to say. Oh, and also one other thing about this whole weapon triangle business. The weapon triangle has been removed in 3 houses. That is the first time that has ever happened in any Fire Emblem besides Echoes. And Echoes, by the way, was a remake of a game from 1992 that had no weapon triangle, and it would be very difficult to include the weapon triangle and, like, balance the game around that. You would have to add a bunch of Axe playable characters. So, they removed the weapon triangle in 3 houses, which a lot of people, shockingly, thought was a positive thing. I really don't understand that. And, I told people what I thought of this. I thought this was going to be a bad idea. And they told me that things like rock, paper, scissors isn't a good game mechanic, or this just allows the player to use whatever weapon type they want. And I was like, what planet are you from? Okay. So, first of all, the weapon triangle is not only about rock, paper, scissors. That is, if you're thinking that, then I have no idea what you're going with here. Because it's not about just, oh, use the axe against the lance, use the lance against the sword, etc., etc. It forces you to have this kind of balance. Like, if they had the weapon triangle, I think that would be a huge help. I'm going through 3 houses, and, like, the lack of the weapon triangle is actually making it possible for me to just steamroll everything without thinking about what weapon type I'm using. Because there's no penalty for taking a lance to an axe guy. There's no penalty for taking an axe to a sword guy. And swords, by the way, are already the best weapon type in the game because of the weight thing I mentioned. The weapon triangle isn't just about using the axe against the lance, or the lance against the sword, because if Fire Emblem was all about one-on-one matchups, like in Pokemon, then the weapon triangle would be something you would want to remove because, you know, the sword guy is going to beat the axe guy every time, but Fire Emblem is not one-on-one. It's like a bunch of units on both sides with a variety of weapon types. You've got to pay attention to not only what weapon type you're using, but you've got to leave a weapon equipped for the enemy phase, right? So you don't want to leave a weapon type equipped that is going to cause a bunch of enemies to come at you, and with the advantageous weapon type. You've got to actually think about what weapon you not only use against an enemy, but what weapon you leave equipped for the enemy phase. And if there's a group of enemies with a variety of weapons, then, you know, you've got to consider that too. And I think, like, I made this shitpost ROM hack, like, just because I was getting angry. Okay, anger definitely fueled this decision, but I made a stupid little ROM hack of Sacred Stones where there's no weapon triangle. The enemy hit rates were in, like, the 60s for the early part of the game, instead of the 40s and the 30s, where they would have been if the weapon triangle were a thing. So that's another thing that the weapon triangle did. For the early parts of the game, it reduces the amount of luck involved, because you're still able to miss, but the miss chance is lower. Like, you can make it so that if you've got an advantageous triangle advantage, then you can make it so that your attacks hit more, or your enemy's attacks hit less. It reduces the amount of RNG, and I think that's a thing people miss quite a bit. So yeah, the weapon triangle being gone, ultimately not a good thing, in my opinion, because it's another thing. it's removing a gameplay mechanic. You are outright removing a gameplay mechanic, and that's going to create less depth in the game. Like I already mentioned, I'm completely steamrolling everything. And by the way, if your beef with a weapon triangle is that you can't choose whatever weapon type you want when you're facing down an enemy, first of all, classes used to restrict what weapon types people were allowed to use. Second, you're not always going to have a choice. You know, this goes for just about anything in the world. You're not going to have a choice all the time. You're not always going to have a choice about what you do to get through a situation in life. There you go. Okay, you're technically going to have a choice. You could choose to fail. But okay. By the way, there's no magic triangle either. They kind of dropped the magic triangle from Shadow Dragon onwards, and I was kind of like, okay, that's kind of fine. I mean, the magic triangle doesn't really do much, but it's still kind of weird to have fire, thunder, and wind magic when there's no real difference between the three of them. I know Thoron has 3 range in 3 houses, and I know Excalibur does more damage against flying enemies, but that's so little. And I know, oh yeah, looking at this list, by the way, I know classes have different preferences for weapons. Like if you're a sword master, you're going to do more damage and have more crit with your sword. Still doesn't matter, because you're getting a bonus for using a particular weapon type rather than getting penalized for using everything else. So, the long and short of this is 3 houses is just un-Fire Emblem, with like being able to use any weapon as any class, being able to use any magic with no different magic types for the different mage classes, and yeah. And it kind of turns all the characters into blank slates that you can customize however you wish. And most of your characters are completely overpowered anyways, so it's like, I don't really get it. I don't really get what they were going for here. I guess they wanted to, like, just have less restrictions and create more player freedom, but the balance is going to be broken now, and the balance being broken means that the difficulty is going to be low unless Lunatic does something crazy. So yeah, that's my thoughts on 3 houses, even though it's completely enjoyable. I want to reiterate that again. It was completely it's enjoyable. I'm having fun. But I just think we're kind of losing what is making Fire Emblem here. And we've been losing a lot of that since Awakening. That's all I want to say. So, that said, I'm looking forward to the rest of the Blue Lines route and the remaining 3 routes. So, whatever happens, like, I'm looking forward to it, and I hope you look forward to it too. If you've got a Switch, totally try out Fire Emblem 3 Houses. That's it. Talk to you later, guys.